Sorry for the glitch in starting, just working out a few kinks on our end. Welcome everyone to the Innovations Lab for Crop Improvement informational webinar. Our goal for this webinar is to introduce the Innovation Lab and its vision, as well as to highlight the requirements for the RFA process and to answer any questions that you may have. In a moment, I will be introducing our speakers and our members of our panelists. And if you should have any questions during our presentation, please feel free to submit them via the Q&A box. And one of our speakers or panelists will address them for you. We also wanted to let you know that we are limited to an hour for this presentation. So if we are not able to get to your question today, we will be posting responses to your questions on our website. Our program manager, Sarah, she'll be moderating our question and answer portion of this webinar, so you can address questions to her as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our introductions. We're going to have each speaker and panelist to introduce themselves and to tell us a little bit about what their roles are with ILSI. Again, my name is Monifa, and I am the program assistant, and we'll turn it over to Steve.
Thanks. This is Stephen Kresovich, the Program Manager of the Innovation Lab for Crop Improvement. I want to thank you all for your interest in the Innovation Lab for Crop Improvement. We've had a great response for this webinar. The last check, we had over 145 registrants representing 33 countries. It's a wonderful turnout. I'd now like to present a brief overview of the Innovation Lab. As highlighted in Monifa's previous slide, the Innovation Lab team includes researchers and staff from Cornell, Kansas State, Clemson, Makerere, Cultural Practice, LLC, and PyStar. The Innovation Lab was established in late September of 2019. We're funded at $25 million for a 5-year period, plus we may acquire additional support through associate awards through the relevant country missions. And we plan to partner with other Feed the Future innovation labs, critical USAID priorities, and broader international initiatives. Our Innovation Lab is a support system for the science of crop improvement. We will identify, develop, pilot, and transfer tools, technologies, and methods. We will focus on tangible goals, including genetic gain and the development of new varieties as outputs. However, we hope our efforts impact a broader constituency in the areas of economic growth, resilience, and the nutritional development goals as outlined by the Global Food Security Strategy. We are driven by the societal implications of our science. Most importantly, we expect our Innovation Lab priorities will be catalyzed and driven by local scientists and institutions. We will partner and complement other key global crop improvement initiatives, including the Crops to End Hunger program through the CG system. The Excellence in Breeding program is funded through the Gates Foundation. The Breeding Program Assessment Tool, also funded by the Gates Foundation, and the more recently developed Breeding Insight Program that's funded through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Research Service. We will not work on rice, maize, or wheat. However, we will focus on critically important crops in our target regions, as defined by the USAID Feed the Future program. These include roots, tuber crops, bananas, legumes, excluding soybean and groundnut, sorghums, and millets. And that would include foxtail, pearl millet, those type of millets. However, we hope the science we advance ultimately will benefit all crops. We hope to empower national institutional breeders and programs to define and drive the scientific advancement. We desire to serve smaller programs and a range of crops. Our scope of collaborations may potentially include partners from 38 countries across 4 regions, as highlighted in this slide. These were also defined by the USAID Feed the Future program. We hope to have engagement from institutions in these regions that represent priorities and targets for the Feed the Future program and other USAID efforts. The areas of inquiry serve as the scientific backbone of the Innovation Lab, and they're noted in this slide on the left. Intellectual and operational support will be provided by Cornell, Kansas State, and Clemson researchers. And for more detail on these areas of inquiry, please look at the Objective Leaders section at the Innovation Lab website. Ultimately converting these areas of inquiry to tangible outputs and outcomes. Ultimately, these capabilities provided through the Innovation Lab and the resources that are available are yours to engage and utilize. We will view and evaluate our research in a broader societal context. We desire to build institutional and individual capacities. Our work is more than just the science of crop improvement. Broader evaluation metrics will be addressed, and these will be highlighted in Dr. Tufan's presentation. So in summary, I'd like to highlight a couple points. First of all, we're in a challenging time. At this point, coronavirus has had no effect on the Innovation Lab activities. However, please frequently visit the website for updates. Finally, I wish you good luck with your submissions. We look forward and desire to build a great crop improvement network through the planned Centers of Innovation. Now for the overview and details of the request for applications for the Centers of Innovation, I'll turn it over to Dr. Holly Tufan. Holly?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Steve. My name is Holly Tufan. I'm based at Cornell University, and I'm the Associate Director for the Innovation Lab for Crop Improvement. And I'll be talking about general overview of the RFA process and the eligibility criteria and the timeline. We really feel that this Center of Innovation, we have a vision that is more bottom up. So we really believe that empowering national programs to pave their own way towards sustainable, climate smart, and equitable crop improvement is the path towards sustainability. And you may have heard around, there's a lot of talk about modernization agendas for crop improvement. And our belief is that this modernization agenda should really be driven by national programs and should really fit impact pathways, resource bases, and visions set out by those national programs. In line with that philosophy, our process will really be one of co-creation and joint visioning with national programs that are eligible for the Centers of Innovation, and that we envision the change around the 5 areas of inquiry that Steve mentioned and that are outlined in the RFA, and we'll go through this in a justified and coordinated fashion. So that's really our philosophy for the Center of Innovation. Eligibility, and there are questions coming up around this in the question and answer box, but we want to, again, in line with our vision, reiterate that the prime institution applicant PI must come from a NARS institution in one of the 38 eligible countries. So the process must be led by a national institution. I'll come to the description of that in the next slide. The proposals offer projects of up to 3 years. I emphasize up to. If you have shorter projects, those are also eligible. So 3 years is the maximum duration. And another really key criteria is that applicants must really clearly define all the product profiles or crops that will be targeted within this investment. Our mandate are RTBs, so root tubers, bananas, legumes, excluding peanuts and soybeans, sorghums, and millets. So those are the mandate crops that we're working on. And the applications must touch on those and articulate which one of those product profiles, and multiple product profiles are allowed. So you can work on RTBs and legumes and sorghums if you like. Another important point is that we really would like to see paths towards impact. So the applications must articulate a development goal and clearly articulate how the activities around this investment really lead to not only becoming center of innovation, really leading to increased benefits for women, youth, climate resilience, and nutrition. Budgetarily, the investments will be up to $1 million for each center of innovation. Again, that's within 3 years, with a tentative start date of the 1st of October 2020. Again, if you have limited, smaller budgets with shorter timeline projects, those are also acceptable. So we encourage you to apply. A definition of a NARS institution that we've been referring to, we've taken this from the FAO to be very broad. So not just encompassing National Agricultural Research System institutes, but also higher education institutions, technical departments of ministries and development agencies, NGOs in the private sector. The only requirement, and this is one that we really would like the applicants to articulate if they're coming from institutions outside of the usual NARI definition, is that the institution must be actively involved in crop improvement research with demonstrated variety development and a mechanism for release and dissemination. So that institution must have an active crop improvement program that leads to variety development and release. Priorities, and these are not required for application, but these are areas that we'll be looking for in evaluation. Proposals that really demonstrate how integrating these tools, technologies, and methods across the 5 domains will lead to crop improvements. So that vision on how the intervention will lead to impact is really important. Linkages with US institutions are a benefit, but not a requirement. And having co-PIs from US minority serving institutions would be a benefit. We can help you identify those at the co-creation phase. Applications led by women, underrepresented minorities, and early career researchers will be prioritized because we really believe in diversity and inclusion. And partnerships with other national program or NARS institutions and CG centers are a benefit. So networks or consortiums are encouraged. Proposals submitted by interdisciplinary groups of PIs, and we'll come to why that's important in a few slides, but really interdisciplinarity is important because not one discipline can solve all the problems that we're facing. And really a clear indication, again, of this impact piece of how becoming a center of excellence will benefit women, youth, nutrition, and climate resilience priorities of that country or national program and consortia. Capacity building is a priority for us. Capacity building plans by applicants should be articulated both at the individual and institutional level. We encourage support of graduate student training. We realize that within 3 years, we probably cannot get PhDs, but if the funding goes towards supporting, partially supporting PhDs, that's good, or MSCs. And also short-term training, technical workshops, training workshops are all encouraged. And an important piece of that would be to articulate a strategy to ensure equal opportunities for trainees, whether they're men or women or younger researchers, or again, from underrepresented minorities. We will also be organizing ILSI-wide trainings for different tools, technologies, and methods, as well as hypothesis-driven breeding research, sabbatical visit for early career researchers at the institutions that are partners, and training for gender and youth responsive research methods. Cross-cutting themes, as Steve mentioned, are really important and central to us. So we encourage the applicants to articulate how the product profiles they're selecting really address gender and youth-based constraints and show potential for increasing economic inclusion for women and youth, and really include traits that address malnutrition and climate resilience. The teams must designate a team member with relevant background and expertise in gender and youth inclusion, nutrition, and/or climate resilience. So we encourage you to team up with social scientists and scientists that work in nutrition and climate resilience to help bolster your team. And there must be funding allocated to research to these areas. Having an articulation of impact and a person on board won't be enough. You'll also have to show the budget to be able to carry out research to show those linkages as well. As a process, we'll go through a kind of a 2 or 3 phase process, depending on how you look at it. Right now, we're in this first quadrant of written questions and a webinar. So we're trying to get a sense of questions that are being asked. The letter of intent will follow, submissions of letters of intent from interested parties and institutions. And then with selected shortlisted applicants, we'll enter a co-creation phase, and I'll explain what that means in a few minutes, where we'll basically go through what we have this joint vision and co-creation, where we'll help those applicants really to the final proposal stage. And then at the final proposal, we'll have that competitive final proposals ending with granting. As a timeline, again, all of this information is in the RFA, but I'm just re-articulating it for the timeline. We're now at the webinar for March 19th. The deadline for written questions is March 23rd, and we'll be posting answers to those questions on our website and also personally responding to you. The deadlines for the letters of intent is April 10th, and the co-creation phase will run between April 24th and June 14th. And the deadline for the submission of the final proposal will be July 5th, with announcement by mid-July of successful applicants. I won't go over all these details. This is in the RFA available on our website and on the application link, but the letters of intent will really be covering articulation of product profiles, impacts from improving the systems that lead to these product varieties that touch on these product profiles, brief analysis of the domains that are weak and that need improvement and that the Center of Innovation will address, and clear plans for articulating gender youth resilience, capacity building, future and current partners, and also supplementary material. And this is important, that we would like to see commitment from institutional leadership of in-kind or financial contributions. So this is a more sustainable investment long-term. All of this will need to fit in 3 pages, so we recognize that these will not be intensive long sections each, but rather just touching on these points. And again, the 3 pages excludes a cover page and all the supplementary letters that come at the end. Submission will be through the PyStar system. The link that I have down here is also available on our website for direct linkages. When you go in and sign into PyStar, you'll see a window that we have a screenshot of here, and you'll just have to click Learn More and Apply and go through the application process. It's very simple online. You'll be submitting everything directly into the system, and it will go straight to the pool of applicants. If you have any questions, please also reach out to us if you're having issues with submission. After LOI submission, as I mentioned, we'll enter the co-creation phase, and we won't talk about the final proposal stage on this call, but the co-creation I'll just mention quickly. What we really mean by this is where we take a short list of applicants and work with them over that period of time of about just over a month to review and refine proposal development. We'll be looking at bolstering capacity building, enabling environment resource availability, and just evaluating those capabilities and how we can help the programs build that into a full proposal. But we want to articulate that the applicant is responsible for documenting and acting on all the points raised during the co-creation process. So it's the ultimate responsibility of the applicant to put forward the final proposal, which is still competitive. Evaluating the proposals will be done by the ILSI management team, also cross-cutting an M&E specialist, and the ILSI advisory committee, as well as an external panel of experts. So we have many people looking at the evaluation across the LOI and the final proposals. This applies to both. The criteria we're looking for are really visions for impact, relevance, cross-cutting, addressing cross-cutting issues, capacity building, and feasibility. And I just want to end by saying we are very excited to be at the stage, and we can't wait to really see the proposals coming forward. And we really look forward to working with you both at the co-creation, at the final stage. And thank you all for joining the webinar today. And with that, I'll pass on to Sarah to tell us any questions that have arose, and we'll help to answer those. Sarah?
Thank you, Hallie, for introducing me and for your presentation so far. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our attendees from all the time zones. I am Sarah Adeyemo. I'm the program manager for the Innovation Lab for Crop Improvement. And my role is to manage the day-to-day activities of the Innovation Lab. We have a couple questions that have come in the course of this webinar. And one question is from Emmanuel Mbeyegala. Are there specific legumes that ILSI focuses on? Must they be among the FAO listed legumes? And the answer to that is the legumes are all included except peanut and soybean. And this has been mentioned before, but just to reiterate, no peanuts and soybean, but all legumes are welcome. The second question is coming from Rajiv Gupta, and it says, can CG centers lead these proposals? I believe Hallie has mentioned something about that, and it's that CG centers cannot lead these proposals. The NARIs are expected to be leading these proposals. We have another question that says, what are MSIs? At what stage does the applicant involve the MSIs? Can ILSI provide a list of MSI from which to select a potential partner? MSIs are minority serving institutions. And the expectation is that they should be included at this LOI stage. And Hallie, do you have anything to say about this? The question is,
Yes.
What MSIs and at what stage does the applicant involve the MSI? Can we provide a list of MSI?
Yes, thank you, Emmanuel, for your question. As Sarah said, MSIs are minority serving institutions. That's a definition that's really bound in the US. So we recognize that it's maybe not be familiar to everyone joining this call. We're certainly happy to provide a list to you or help make linkages with MSIs. You know, we're definitely happy to do that. I just want to reiterate, it is not a requirement to work with an MSI. It is a priority and would be a benefit for the application, but it's not a requirement. So we can help you link to MSI institutions, but I just want to iterate, it's not a requirement for everyone to pair. So please get in touch with us and we can help you with that, yes.
And Hallie, another question, what does it mean to define a product profile? Does that just mean specifying which crops are targeted? This is from Jess Lyons.
Thank you, Jess, for your question. Product profiles, this is kind of relatively new language for those of you in the international crop improvement area, but yes, it would basically mean a crop to be targeted, but we want to go beyond that. And we can share with you a definition of what a product profile means if that's useful. But I urge you to look at the Excellence in Breeding Initiative website. How they define product profiles is what we would probably go with. But basically, yes, it's the conceptualization of a crop that targeted for a certain function in a certain region. So I'm happy to share that with you if you need a specific definition, but you could also check in the Excellence in Breeding website.
The next question, is there a figure for in-kind and financial contribution that each NARS should state in the commitment letter? Can the contribution be included in the budget? Steve, you want to take that?
Yes. We look for partners that show solid commitment, and the contributions can be included in the budget explicitly.
So another question, it's on budget, it's from Emmanuel. Is a budget supposed to be submitted at a phase 1? Is there a budget template? If not, are there budget lines to consider? I believe that when Hallie was talking, she mentioned the fact that you can have budget up to $1 million or less. And we do not have a budget template at this time, but we expect that you would surprise us and do an excellent job.
Just to build on that, that in the LOI stage, we would just need a bottom line really, or just some brief budget categories, but the co-creation and final proposal stages will have much more detailed budgets.
Thank you, Holly. We have another question from anonymous attendee. Is it possible to apply with a project with more than one crop? The answer is yes, you can apply with more than one crop. Another question from Emmanuel says, is there a limit on the number of applications from a single organization? Steve, you want to take that?
I think that we'll accept any at this point. Our intent in the letter of intent phase is to cast the net widely to get the most possible groups involved. So multiple proposals can come from a single institution.
Thank you, Steve. I'll take another question. I'm not sure. It's asked if faba bean is included in legume. Yes, faba bean is eligible as part of the mandate crops. Okay, another question is from Alexander Bombom. Is it mandatory to have linkage to work with US institutions? The answer is no, it is not mandatory to work with US institutions. Steve, you want to talk more?
No, I think you've covered that, Sarah. You don't have to work with the US institution. You need to form the best team possible, independent of location.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Just a quick note, I'm seeing there's comments in chat and Q&A. Please post your questions to the Q&A box because it's hard to keep track in both. So if you've asked a question in the chat box and we're not addressing it, please move it to the Q&A because we're moving through those systematically. Thank you.
So another question that I would like to answer is, will regional proposals covering 2 to 3 countries be accepted? Yes, I believe it's going to be accepted. If a project has more than one crop, there may be more than one PI. That is correct, and that is fine. And another question from the anonymous attendee is matching fund contribution necessary from proposals submitting organizations?
This is matching funds. We're looking for partners that are going to contribute in a concrete and meaningful way. The more explicitly that interest and commitment can be made, the better off it'll be reviewed in the proposal or in the letter of intent.
Thank you, Steve. There's a question from Claire Mukan Kuzi. Is the expectation of the Center of Excellence be limited to a physical location of a breeding program, or may refer to a network of programs working together? You're absolutely correct. That's the expectation. Steve and Holly?
I can take that one. Thank you, Claire, for your question. The expectation is you still need to have a PI institution. So if you have a network of programs working together, absolutely, you should build on that, but you would still need a lead PI institution who's applying.
Another question from Eileen. Is it possible to apply for call in coalition with 3 NARs? And please advise if we need one letter of commitment for the application. Steve, Holly?
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Is it possible to apply for call in coalition with 3 NARs? And please advise if we need one letter of commitment for the application.
Multiple groups can work together. They need to be led in country, and letters of commitment need to be submitted by each institution.
Thank you, Steve. Let's see.
Sarah, I see a question that I can address from Bernard. 2-part. 1, can you elaborate on the traits relevant to youth? And 2, can a center of innovation in one region, say West Africa, collaborate with one in another region, say East Africa? The answer to that is number 1, the traits relevant to youth. There are no universal traits relevant to youth, but you would have to look within the product profiles that you're proposing if there are traits that are relevant, and those would be prioritized if you can, but I wouldn't say there are universal traits that you should be targeting. And a center of innovation working with one region with another, absolutely, that would probably be an advantage. As we've said before, you can have multiple partners coming together. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. I'll take a question from Emmanuel Beyagala. Can an applicant work on a mix of crops, e.g. sorghum and cowpea? The answer is yes. You can work on a mix of crops. What else do we have?
There's one, Sarah, from Melissa Hambly-Larios. Thanks for this webinar. Could you clarify if CG centers may participate in multiple LOIs? Yes, as co-PIs, again, not as lead PIs, but CGs can be partners in applications of multiple LOIs.
There's a question from Craig Yencho. Should projects focus on specific breeding targets or focus on tools, technologies, and methods to address? I think that's at the decision of the program team itself. We'll look to both. We look to outcomes and impacts, so you'll have to weigh that yourself, Craig. And then Jim Kelly asked a question down below, and this is relevant. Can programs that have a quick win project from the EOC apply for a new proposal or continuation? Yes, but remember, Jim, that the criteria for the quick wins are different than the criteria for the centers of innovation. So make sure you look at the criteria and address those clearly.
There's one from Jido Khan. Hello, this is Jido, Director of ISRA, Sierra, Senegal. Are you going to launch one single RFA during this proposal, or will there be other occasions to submit a proposal, commission proposals? The answer to that is we envision a 2-phase process. This is the first RFA round, but in about 2 years' time, we would be looking at a possible second round. So, but this would be the major round that I would encourage everyone to apply to and not wait for the next round. Just going down, there's another one from, is Lebanon eligible? I encourage everyone to go back to the RFA and look at the list of 38 eligible countries to answer that, please.
Kristen Billieu, can you elaborate on the ELC training and workshops to support Centers of Innovation projects? Will they be around the priority domains? Holly?
Thank you for that question. We will be having general ILC training and workshops that will be open likely regionally, but particular to the centers of innovation. Again, that would be through co-creation and really talking to each program, because program needs may be different. So that would be more tailored. So we'll have both. We'll have topical trainings around tools, technologies, and methods regionally that would be open to more than the centers of innovation. But through the centers of innovation, if there are particular training needs, we'll also be tailoring those too.
There's a question in the chat box that says 3 years are very short to develop a variety from product profile and to disseminate it. Are you thinking about second of the project? second phase? Holly?
We realize that you won't have a product in 3 years, but their measurable progress should be obvious.
Thank you, Steve. All right. I want to say thank you all so much for joining us for this informational webinar. We appreciate your interest, your time, and patience. We hope that we have been able to answer your questions. And in case we missed any of your burning questions, we will definitely respond directly to those concerns. We'll be diligent to send personalized responses, and also we'll upload an FAQ on the ilc.cornell.edu website. And for further clarifications, we're welcoming RFA related questions until Monday, the 23rd of March. With these words, we have come to the end of the webinar. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, everybody.